So we're going to cover some basics of statistics for your MCA today, because what happens is they give you 3 scores, and then they take the average of the 3 scores to determine if you pass the MCA or not. So there's an algebra score, okay, that they give you 1 to 9 on. They give you a geometry score, again 1 to 9, and they give you a Prob and stats. And each one counts equally. So we're going to go over some Prob and stats stuff to kind of help you boost that score a little bit. Okay. So first of all, we're going to talk about normal curves. So normal curves, what they look like is just one hump. Okay. It's called a bell curve. Underneath it, there is a middle tick mark, and there's 2 tick marks out to the side. And the middle tick mark is your mean, and then you add your standard deviation each time going up, okay? Or you subtract your standard deviation every time you go down, okay? So that answers these 2 questions. What tick marks do you use? You use your mean, and you add and subtract your standard deviation. How many tick marks go out on each side? You need to have 3 going out on each side for those standard deviations. So this says if your mean is 10 and your standard deviation is 2, draw the normal curve. So you would look for a bell-shaped curve. Your mean is 10. A standard deviation of 2 means this is 12, 14, and 16. And then this would be 8, 6, and then 4. Okay. This one, if the mean is 9, okay, it means you put 9 in the middle, and then your standard deviation is 0.5. It means this would be 8.5, 8, oops, going the wrong way, 9.5, 10, and 10.5 is at the end of your curve. This would be 8.5, 8, and 7.5. They might tell you to read a standard deviation curve, or a normal curve. The typical measurement is your mean, so that's 500. Give or take would be 50. So your give or take is your standard deviation. Your typical measurement is your mean. So this one, your typical measurement would be 64, your mean. Give or take 6, because that's how much they added and subtracted for your standard deviation. Okay? So I'm going to teach you how to find these 2 on a graphing calculator. So what you would do is you would plug in the numbers into your graphing calculator. So, alright, so you would go to Stat, Edit. You would clear this, and then you need to plug these numbers in. So now you'd plug these numbers in. So we're going to plug in 1, 3, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 10. Then you would go to Stat, Calc, and you want this one variable stats. So hit Enter. You're going to calculate. This first number, this X with a line over it, is your mean. So your mean is 6.4. Your standard deviation is this circle one, this circle X here. So that's 3.2. So your standard deviation is 3.2. And then, of course, you would graph your normal curve with your mean being 6.4 and your standard deviation then going up and going down. Okay? Alright, the other thing we're going to talk about is box and whisker plots. So, box and whisker plots, so mean and standard deviation are normal curve. Box and whisker plots are similar in that they show a distribution, but they use the median. So the median is used in box and whisker plots. We're going to use this information up here, and you go actually to this one variable stats again, that we just did. So just a reminder, that's stat, calc, one variable stats. You would calculate. And at the bottom of this one variable stats, there's your min, your quartile, your median, your third quartile, and your max. And so you would graph this. Okay, so here's your box. In the middle goes your median. So your median is 7. And then you have 10. It looks like 3. And then your minimum is 1. And your maximum is also 10. So if your maximum is the same as your minimum, what you would do is you actually wouldn't have a whisker coming out on that end. It would just stop at that number 10. Okay? So if it's the same as either of your ends, you just stop at that. A question you might see them ask is, what is the interquartile range? That means they want you to take your third minus your first quartile. So your third quartile would be 10. Your first quartile would be 3. So that would mean that 7 is your interquartile range. The other thing that you need to know is that each of these have a value of 25% typically. In this case, because there's no more going up, this one would hold a 50 percentile range, okay, because you have to combine it with the fact that there should have been one out here. But typically you'll have 4 areas, and each one's worth 25%. So if I said, what's the probability, using your box and whisker, of 3 or above happening, you would say 75%, because this is 25% and this part is 50%. Okay, if they said, what's the probability of having 7 or lower, using a box and whisker, you would say it's 50%, because each one of these sections is 25%.